CHAPTER XI OF MAN AND NATURE ON THE BROADS by Arthur Henry Patterson. Recording is in the public domain. November in Broadland. Buy my caller herrin', ye little ken their worth. Well, buy my caller herrin', oh ye may call them vulgar farin'. Wives and mithers maist despairin', ca' them lives o' men. By Lady Nan. A cold, damp drizzle generally ushers in the dreariest of the Broadland months November. It is the month of fogs and mists, and driving sleets deform the day. Jim Trett, the fenman's opinion would be that November's neither here nor there, nor one thing nor the t'other, a kind of dad and alive affair. The last remnants of the sere and withered leaves are stripped from the branches of the woodland trees, and they lie, a natural matting, to protect the tender shoots of a future generation of wild plants, which love to spread their flowers in the glade and on the hedge bank. Flora is not dead, but taking needful repose. Intervals of pleasant weather occasionally brighten the face of nature, and the sunlight flings the shadows of the trees distinctly upon the land, and we are tempted forth to lengthy rambles. Such a morning finds us in the train which fusses along through Broadland. There is scarcely a breath of wind, and the rays of the morning sun are dazzling after days of storm and mist and gloom. Ah, 'bor, volunteers a son of old Ocean, who has made himself comfortable in his rough and ready fashion in the same compartment of ourselves, and between whose knees dangles a string of silvery herrings. This here's only a wather breeder. Yow just see if I ain't far out from bein' right. Goodness knows we've had a tidy spell of bad wather this month. Law, how that blowed the airly part of last week.' After having delivered himself of this comment, he relapses a while into silence. Some unpleasant reminiscences, mayhap, are passing before his mental vision. We refrain from unduly intruding upon his cogitations, and peering out from the carriage window, we catch a glimpse of the sea, now placidly rippling and gleaming, as if, in its summer play, as gentle as a child. Great gulls, mostly greys, the immature of the greater saddlebacks, amongst which may be distinguished a few of their blacker backed elders, and several herring gulls and their smaller relatives, the Larus ridibundus, are winnowing their way on easy pinions to and fro, playfully dipping to the surface of the water to snatch up fragments of herrings and other animal refuse as their keen eyes espy them. Over the nearer marram covered sandhills several white winged snow buntings are hunting for seeds of the various ' dune ' plants that flourished there in the warmer days. In flight they are exceedingly conspicuous, and the grey mantled hooded crow, recently arrived from the Norwegian fiords, loafs here and there, ready to pounce upon wounded fowl or any carrion that less foul eating creatures have passed carelessly by. We might, perhaps, have noticed the various changes in the country through which we are being rapidly borne along, but our brawny shouldered, Guernsey clad fisher friend, who has distributed one or two characteristic expectorations upon the floor, and replenished his capacious cheeks with a fresh section of twist, becomes talkative, and monopolises our attentions. Nothing loth, we settled to a friendly gossip, and let him spin his yarn. ' Yow are right, 'bor. We hev had some rummy wather, and only this time last week I never reckoned on comin' home to my old gal agin. Boy an' man, I ha' followed the sea off an' on this 20 year, but I ain't had sich a near 'un afore. I doan't like to see a sight, and I doan't know anyone as do. If they say they do, they lie. There, 'bor, that's straight. Anyhow, I mane them as go a fishin' and smackin' on the North Sea. It'll do middlin' in summer, but it cuts up rough in winter, and, little or much, it's rough pretty gin'rally. Us Broadland folk, many on us, you know, het to eke out a livin' partly ashore and partly afloat. Loads foller it up altogither, spendin' a few odd days ashore between times. I go a herrin' catchin', and spend the rest of the year ashore a farm labourin'. The fisherman's life, 'bor, is a hard 'un, and it ain't the weak 'uns as kin stand it. Them as kin doan't look any the wuss, but a sight the better arter leavin' the plough tail a while and on the summat better livin', for the briny piles up yer appetite as well, grow fat and kedgy (sprightly). I wor a sayin' it blowed. Well, the wind wor fair, and things looked promisin' when the old tug Gleaner chucked off the tow rope of the Seamew, and we stood out to sea. We was makin' for the fishin' grounds, some miles to the north east'ard. The sun went down in an ugly sky, but we didn't think as how things 'ud change for the wuss so quickly. We had hardly got the nets shot and got turned in, when the wind began to freshen. The skipper didn't like the manner on it, and his glass went back most cur'ously. He gan the order to haul 'em in. Now, 'tain't no easy job to haul in 1.25 miles of herrin' nets, stowin' the bowls (floats) and sich like, 'specially when you're doin' it in a hurry. It wor well we did it kedgy, for it blowed most awful by the time we'd done it, and got hove to under storm canvas. Yow'd be surprised how soon the North Sea turns up choppy. We didn't feel partickler unaisy as the good wessel dipped her bows and then rid over the tarrin' seas. Now she climbed the white fringed mountains, and now she fell from their tops into the yawnin' gulf below. It wor more awful than grand plungin' along in the black night. Two on us kept watch. The night was fearful long. Thinks I, a basin of hot tea 'ud do my innards good. Half drownded with the spray as flung itself aboard, and stung and blinded with the hail, I shouts into my mate's ear and tells him so, and went down. I'd hardly got below when we heerd a terrific row on deck. A sea broke over the wessel enough to bust her in two, and we heard a shriek. It were poor Dick Stevens's last cry. In a moment he must ha' been carried overboard and been drownded. I kin hear that screech now. Poor Dick, he wor a dacent feller. Right into the mainsail the water poured, heavin' the Seamew down on to her beam ends, and snappin' the boom like a piece of stick. We thought it was all up with us now, 'bor. The foresheet were carried away, and the sail flapped madly in the wind. Somehow, God only knows how, she righted, but the water had rushed down the hatchway and half filled her. Did we feel scared? Well, if I say we didn't, it'd be a lie. But we didn't feel like givin' it up while the wessel hung together. We should ha' looked a rum crew if yow'd ha' seen us, some half dressed, hatless and bootless, jest as we'd turned in. We'd our work cut out, I can tell ye. Cuttin' the boom clear for fear it 'ud knock a hole in us, and clearin' away the mainsail, we rigged up a jib, and soon brought her head to wind. Some got to the pumps, and right glad we was to hear them shout, ' There she sucks !' for how could she face the heavy seas with her hold more'n half full of water? Tired and jaded, some on us went below agin, steadyin' ourselves as best we could as the wessel plunged and lurched, some on us prayin' to Him whose only Son settled the gale on the Sea of Galilee, and axin' Him to bless the wives and little 'uns as was worryin' at home for dad a tossin' on the ocean. The hard horny hand brushes away a tear from the good fellow's weather beaten cheek. A awful crash on deck agin made us hurry up the companion way, and a terrible sight met our eyes. Many a ton of water had struck us. The wessel were pretty well clean swept, boat and everything gone, barrin' the mast and the rag of a sail, and some of the bulwarks forward was knocked clean away. Well for old Billy Harden as he'd lashed hisself to the tiller, or he'd a gone with 'em. As it wor, he broke a rib or two, and we had to carry him below. I took the tiller, prayin' God to help me to do it, while some hurried to set another jibsail. We kept burnin' flares, but lor, who could help us? Everyone else had enough to do to look after theirselves. And then, good hivens, a wuss crash followed. We'd been run into by another craft as wor in wuss plight 'an ourselves. It wor the affair of a moment when a young feller, God only knows how he managed it, jumped clean off her into ours. Afore we could git on our feet agin, for we were all knocked down by the collision, we lost sight of her. She must ha' sank directly. The poor chap said as she were the Persewerance, trawler, waterlogged, and in a sinkin' state. All hands had been swept overboard except him and the mate who'd steered for us. Poor feller, the mate had gone down with her. We were now in wusser state than iver, for we'd a big hole stove in the bows as let in any amount of water, and it were only by keepin' the pumps a goin' we floated. Fortunately the storm lulled a bit, and we ran afore the wind till we sighted Caister. Burnin' flares agin, we soon had the lifeboat arter us, and them brave Caister men, God bless 'em, took us off, puttin' as many as their own men aboard as could be spared, and standin' by her, reachin' Yarmouth harbour with us, with the wust of the gale over, and the daylight a breakin' east'ard. Yow know now what mischief wor done, and how many a brave feller niver sailed into port agin. By the time our friend's yarn is ended, we have drawn up at the Broadland station, and as our road lies in the self same direction, we continue to chat in a friendly sort of way until we reach his cottage, standing in a well kept little garden. Evidently he had been expected home, for a trio of merry youngsters, flinging wide open the somewhat rickety gate, ran to meet him, clustering round him as only loving children would, and smothering his bronze face with kisses. ' Dad's home,' brings out the good man's wife, who meets and welcomes him as one of the ' wives and mithers maist despairin' ' only could. What a marked difference there is in the outlook on the Broads to day. The yachtsman has entirely deserted them, and but for one or two boats containing couples of enthusiastic pike fishers, we should have the solitudes to ourselves. It is cold work at its best, sitting or standing hour after hour, throwing your live bait into likely spots where Esox lucius may be lurking. One need possess an abnormally strong constitution and will beside, to follow it up successfully. One angler yonder has a big fellow in hand. How the maddened creature flurries and dashes in its terror! Eagerness and many another emotion are indexed on that flushed face as the fisherman gives and takes, hopes that he may prove victorious in the struggle, fears that the big fish will have his own way in the end, and that look of triumph as he adroitly gaffs the tired out monster is the most marked feature of them all. And it is with justifiable pride he contemplates his huge quarry now lying at his feet, and blesses the stout, stubborn tackle and his right good luck, which proved more than a match for the shark of our Broadland waters. A slight breeze ruffles the face of the cold looking waters, and rustles through the rush and reedy broad margins, fluttering the dry leaves and rattling the equally dry stems into strange rustling music. The reeds have not so much altered in general appearance yet as in colour. A few of the lanceolate leaves have dropped, and the feathery head tufts have assumed the woolliness that tells of a full age and a speedy dissolution. On yonder tuft a couple of small brown birds are busily feeding. The juvenile molluscs, which, in the sunny days, crawled up their stems for a short siesta, have gone below, and the handsome bearded tits, for such are they, must perforce be thankful for a vegetarian dietary, and so they are taking their fill of reed seeds. They are merry creatures, lively and musical even in winter, making the reed bed ring with their clear flute like ping ping. Unfortunately for the reed pheasant, as the Norfolkese call him, the collector is always eager for a specimen of this indigenous bird of Broadland, who but for persecution and slaughter would remain with us all the year round. If our fenmen should exterminate the native race, it will become lost to us, for we have no migrants of this species putting in an appearance in winter. The time is gone for fifties to be seen together here. What a host of birds we miss to day! Not a reed warbler, swallow, martin, or whitethroat is seen. The rattling notes of the common wren, hunting in the alders, and the chinking song of the redbreast have become familiar, and the harsher cries of the berry feeding tedido, of which the fieldfare and redwing are the most vociferous representatives, are heard on every side where hedgerows trend. There are some wildfowl on the Broad. They are apparently napping, for their heads are snugly tucked under wing. Their small size unmistakably decides them to be teal. A crested grebe, disporting and fishing near by, disturbs them. They rearrange their already tidy plumage, then playfully dodging each other for a moment, take to wing and make for some other Broad. The grebes do not appear so plentiful as they have been. On the approach of frost, when the skaters will make their advent here, they will have betaken themselves to the tidal estuaries, where food may yet be had. What big bird could it be that, disturbed by our oar crackling in among the dry reeds, now took to wing, and with a sharp harsh cry hurried away? We recognise in its brown mottled plumage and long thick roughed neck that rare East Anglian outlaw, the common bittern, now, alas, no longer deserving its distinctive title, for by the draining of its native reed swamps and marshes, to which it resorted in the breeding season, they no longer afford it that secrecy and protection which seem so necessary to its perfect happiness. Jim Trett, or any of his kindred, would have been delighted to have made so close an acquaintance with the bird as we have, and to have levelled their fowling pieces at it. Bottlebump, as the fenmen name it, usually feeds at night, and is extremely loth to take wing by day, suspiciously eyeing intruders through the labyrinth of reeds and skulking off noiselessly at their approach. We have been fortunate in seeing the fellow in his dull, flagging kind of flight. There are few small creatures that fly, swim, or crawl that Bottlebump despises when downright hungry. The last eggs of the bittern found in Broadland were taken in the '60s. We catch, of course, an occasional glimpse of coots and moorhens, and pay scant heed to them, or the snipe which frequently pass squeaking overhead. Some tufted ducks, a couple of interesting shovellers, and a red-throated diver, seeking a change of diet of young roach, severally engage our attention. We push the boat up into a little sluice, at the end of which a kind of dam has been banked up. A rather large ditch on the other side is kept within bounds by a quaint, skeleton-like drainage pump mill that throws its superfluous water into the Broad. We step ashore on the boggy soil, and scramble up to take a closer inspection of the curious structure. Its machinery is simple. The mill sails, when at work, whirl round as the winds play on them. By a simple crank adjustment the ' box ' goes up and down, now fast, now slow, as the rod is affected by the movement of the sails. They are revolving, but quite slowly now, and, for want of oil, strange rasping and screeching noises emanate from the machinery. In the water below it, the aquatic plants reflect their broken and dishevelled remnants. The sedges are crumpled and drooping. Not a little red or blue dot of a wild flower is there to relieve the dull monotony of coloration. Everything is brown and sere. The only bright colours are the yellow willow leaves floating upon the surface. The slight breeze gradually dies away. The mill sails cease revolving. Stepping into the boat again, lunch is brought to daylight, and we sit down a while to enjoy it. Quietude has reassured whatever creatures may have skulked into safe hiding at our approach. How unobservedly they vanish! A dark brown bird, wonderfully like the dead herbage that it skulks amongst, glides into notice. But for its movements we had not discerned it. It is a water rail. Its sneaking habits are its safeguard. And what fuss or ostentation is necessary when life's duties and necessities simply consist of capturing the snails, slugs, worms, and aquatic plants on which it feeds? Its summer cry is a very odd croaking, which the natives here call sharming. A crackling in the reeds attracts our attention on the right. A huge animal, that we at once know to be an otter, forces his way through the reedy phalanx, and is about to discuss the good qualities of a fine tench upon the very ' rond ' we have just stepped off. His quick black eyes have caught our slightest movement, and like a stone he drops into the water. We secure that tench, for it's as good for man as otter, and the fellow can procure another far easier than we can. This savours of appropriativeness. Poor fellow, it's a sorry life he leads at the best, for every man's hand is against him. Nobody has a word to say in his favour. The very fish he devours are grudged him, as if he were to be blamed for taking the paltry fish for his living. Why not rather blame those who, for the sake of slaughter only, haul out hundredweights to lie and rot upon the broadside? However, while the interminable reed bed exists, so long will the otter, in spite of persecution, at least hold his own. Who can that be, standing by the mill pump, with an eel pick in his hand and beckoning us? At first we fail to recognise him, but his voice is unmistakable. It's none other than Jim Trett, the fenman. We row back again. He has been eel picking, and his inverted bucket, with a bottom where the top is usually located, with his pick and his old fowling piece, with his worthy self, are soon aboard with us. We have divined his wish to row back home with us, and so to save his old legs some mile or two's tramping. He has flung a brace of wild ducks and a woodcock in before him. But why this alteration in his physiognomy? Well, 'bor, as yow seem cur'ous about it, I may as well tell you the mainin' of it all. Last Tuesday? No, 'bor, let me be right on it. It wor the Monday. I went out with my old 8-bore, thinkin' to get a clip at a bunch of grey lag geese as wor scoffin' or eatin' the young wheat in a field up hinder to their heart's content. Now, old woman, I says, afore lavin' the house, yow'll hev summat worth the bacon for dinner to morrow, or my name ain't what it are. Says she, doan't you tell or count your chickens afore you hatch 'em. That's where I bate you, I says, 'cause they're geese and not chickens at all. Howsomedever I goes arter 'em, and by dint of crawlin' along a hull (dry ditch) among nettles and brambles, wadin' through sluss (mire) and what not, come up within aisy gunshot. Now, Peggy, says I, do yer duty, and I claps her to my shoulder and pulls the trigger. Only a click she made. I hadn't put a patch (cap) on, and if yow'll believe me, I fumbled in ivery pocket and couldn't find one. The geese hains up their heads a wonderin', but seein' nought to be scared on, went on feedin'. I could ha' hulled (thrown) Peggy in the hull. Howsomever, thinks I ha' got a match. Here goes. So, puttin' my hand jest under the trigger guard to steady her, I poured a charge of powder over the nipple so as not to miss goin' off if possible. Click went the match. Up jumped the flock, or tried to. As they bunched up, Peggy blazed into 'em, settlin' how many I didn't know, for the powder as wor on the gun and spilled in my hand bust up into my silly old face, burnin' off ivery hair as wor on it and fairly blindin' me. But I got my bards (4 on 'em) as sun as I come any way round it all. Ain't I a lovely critter just now? My old woman wor finely skeered. I hope I shall get over the moot (moult) by springtime. As we row across the Broad, a dense fog, which we have been anticipating, settles over everywhere, so that to steer homewards without mishap we skirt the reed bed, making a detour much longer than necessary, but, as in walking in a fog, so one may row and row and find oneself an hour hence at the very place started from. Now and again a gull looms up in the thickness, appearing much larger than he really is. Like a grebe or two that we make closer acquaintance with than usual, he shuns our society as soon as he recognises us. As the fog seems likely to last some time, we quit the Broad and walk homewards with our discursive friend, who has much to tell us. This afternoon he is expected at Farmer Hobbs's with his ferrets. Rats have become more plentiful than welcome. One curious incident happens near the landing stage. A moorhen paddling round in search of food has attracted the hungry eyes of a big pike. A splash and a whirl, and the fish's ugly head appears above water, but a moment too late, for the bird has taken to wing in the very nick of time. On our way towards the village we pass a trio of farm hands watering their horses at the horse pond. They have been at the plough. We cannot help noticing the contrast in the gait of Hodge, whose life is entirely spent ashore. Long used to walking over ploughed and soft land, he takes slow and lengthy lopes or strides, with his shoulders forward and his awkward arms swinging in pendulum motion at his side. His billycock hat, canvas slop, and fustian breeks, tied with pieces of string below the knees, complete his orthodox attire. We venture to ask one brawny fellow, why these knee cords? ' 'Bor,' says he, 'yow foller the plough, or work on the land where wet grass and rubbage sod or soak yer trousers below. Jest yow stoop without 'em bein' tied to, and yow'd bust off ivery button yow'd on 'em. It gi' yer freedom of movement, 'bor, and law, we doan't fail dressed without 'em.' The fisher Broadman takes shorter strides, rolls in his walk, turns out his heavy elbows, and somewhat reverses his hands. His well filled guernsey, and heavy but less ungainly boots, with the usual billycock, completes his undress uniform. The barber and he are on friendly terms, for a moustache he resolutely refuses to wear. He becomes altogether smarter in appearance, manners, and lingo than droning, vegetating Hodge. But those brawny rotund shoulders and that portly figure mark the fisherman indelibly, not that all grow fat. Having accepted an invitation to 'hev a cup of tea' in our fisher friend's house, we drop in on our homeward way to the village station betimes, finding the good man playing all sorts of capers with the youngsters, who at times threaten to 'swamp him,' as he puts it. The appearance of strangers curbs their rough play somewhat, and without being rude exactly, and a long way from being impudent, they stare at us as we enter. And they do stare, to be sure, these Broadland children, although the novelty of 'yachtin' and other folk a gadwaddicking tripping on the Broads is wearing off. There is a savoury smell of bloaters, not those oak billet smoked delicacies from the fish house, but fresh herrings, or rather the least bit salted, that have hung a day or two in the air to dry and season. Grilled over a clear wood fire they are exceedingly appetising, and we are not long in 'falling to.' The home made bread is in keeping with the herrings, which we disintegrate with our fingers. The fastidious spoil the flavour by using knife and fork. Hunches of bread disappear as if by magic all round. The youngsters, as well as we, have prodigious appetites. 7 herrings disappear from between Billy Tungate, our host's big brown fingers. He, too, has an appetite. The tea is black by name and appearance. Tungate's missus has been broken into "bilin' it in the old kettle, and emptyin' the leaves only when there's no room to put more in." Then when full, as the fisher folk do at sea, she empties it, so he tells us, and makes a fresh start from the kettle bottom. One Broadland cottage is much like another both inside and out. There is the same old time red brick structure, tinged with the greens and yellows of age. The same honeysuckle or roses trained over the small paned windows, and the martin's nest above the doorway. A tiny flower garden runs before it to the palings, with a hedge of holly or privet growing parallel. The walls inside are whitewashed, and a regiment of little cheap prints and family photographs are hung in anything but a methodical way upon them. They have been tacked on as they turned up. The brick floor is sanded, the fireplace bright with lead and elbow grease. Everything is clean as wax, from the youngsters' ruddy faces, fresh washed for ' Dad ' to kiss them, to the baby's little print dress for ' Dad's home, yow know.' The homely repast having come to an end, friend Tungate gets down his long clay pipe, draws from unknown ' fob depths ' his sealskin pouch of strong cheap shag, and tempts us to share its contents. The youngsters have each had their hug and kiss, and their mother trots them off to bed, but not to slumber yet, for they have some arrears of fun to get over before they fall asleep, when not a deen or sound will be heard, not even a winnock or cry from the baby. Our good man grows chatty as the smoke curls upwards. We may not place on record scarcely one fraction of his yarn, which is of things fishy and of the sea. ' That inshorin' of the herrin's is a wonderful thing, 'bor, so reg'lar, so enormous, and in course so welcome. Some say they come to spawn, p'raps they do, but I have a notion as they come on the hunt for food as well. What do herrin's eat? Well, they eat wery small shrimps, 'possum shrimps I heerd a gents once call 'em, small sea wermin, and even the spawn and young of their own sort. It's a rare godsend, their comin'. We fishin' chaps muster up some thousands strong, and man some 400 or 500 boats. A fishin' boat, all found, without her nets, costs suffin' over £1,000, and her nets nearly half as much. So it manes some thousands of pounds a rollin', doan't it? Yow know, at least I s'pose you do, that a herrin' net's like a wall of meshes, floated atop with corks, kept straight down with its own weight. A single boat drifts out some 150 nets, each 30 yards long, 11 yards deep, some mile and a half, that makes it. We keep an eye on the gulls and wilducks (guillemots) and the gants (gannets). Where they fish we know there's suffin'. Shootin' our nets at nightfall, we hauls 'em airly in the mornin'. It's a rare sight to see us haulin' in thousands of silvery critters as have gilled theirselves a shovin' to get clear of the nets. The more they shove, in course the tighter they get, and drown theirselves, they do to be sure. We got over 20 last, a couple of nights ago. That's, lemme see how many. A last is 10,000, reckon 32 over for each 100, That's 13,200. I reckoned it up this morning at 264,000. They fetched £9 a last. That weren't a bad bit of work. Gales and bad luck play the mischief up with us sometimes. We get paid in proportion to our takes, you know. So much on the last, or otherwise by the dole or share. There's 11 on us from skipper to boy. A good season, and some may have to take £40 or £50 for their share, which ain't bad, seeing as we fish from the end of July to Christmas. Bad luck it is as spiles us when we make up in debt. It's a lottery, 'bor, it are. You've seen the fish wharf, ain't you, when the fishin's in full swing? Ain't it a sight to see the fleet of boats put in and out, and the full herring swills or baskets spread a whole mile along the quayside? And ain't we a rough, unkempt lot in our sails and oilies (oilskins), and faces unwashed for a week at a time? Just fancy a little herring ruling the lives of thousands. Merchants, fishermen, tellers counters, auctioneers, coopers, blacksmiths, sailmakers, ship carpenters, and 100 other sort of folks. And thousands on 'em, all getting more or less benefited by one little fish. But, in course, the millions of 'em do it. You've been in a fish house, I s'pose? That's a rum sight, seeing the carters fetching the fish, the hands a salting, washing, spitting, or running 'em on spits or sticks, hanging, kippering, packing, labelling, and what not, ain't it? A few hours hanging in the smoke room makes a herring into a Yarmouth bloater, and as many weeks as hours make ham curd reds of 'em. And for a breakfast dainty, give me one on 'em, though for a matter of that, didn't they make me dry? I could manage half a dozen. Much that relates to the habits and whims of the herrings, their varieties, the manoeuvres of the fishermen to outwit them, much of the birds and marine monsters that prey upon them, of humorous and pathetic incidents that brighten and sadden the fisherman's life, is told us, until the striking of the old Dutch clock in the corner warns us that it is time to be off if we would catch our train. A tap at the window brings us out quickly. It is none other than our old friend Trett, who is off to the station with a trunk of eels. ' I thought as you'd be here, 'bor, and as I've borrowed Caleb Hewitt's pony, and here's room for you, well, I don't see as how you'll need to walk.' We bid Tungate good night. Trett puts the grey pony into an easy trot, and away we go. ' Look here, 'bor,' says he, ' you've allers been good to me and the missus. Do take this here for your dinner to morrow. It'll please your missus, and I know it will yow. I kilt a couple this morning down in the 7 acre midder.' We dine at home next day on a fine fat bean goose, and wish, dear reader, you could have dropped in upon us and have had a taste of its sweet juicy flesh. Chapter 11